I want to take advantage of this opportunity that we have, and I want to bring up my friend Gino Mingo, and we're just going to chat for a little bit, and you guys get to be a part of it, and we're going to talk about some of these things and get differing opinions and what have you. So we're both over 50, so we're going to use stools. So let me give you the history of Gino and I. He has been on several podcasts. On 10 Steps Further, we've talked about all these different kind of issues. Plus, he's just my friend. After all of the racial unrest that happened in 2020, Joanna and I were sitting around going, you know what? Our church needs to do more. We need to be more aware. And so, but we also didn't want to do anything right away because it felt knee-jerk. So a couple months in, I called my buddy Gino and said, Gino, will you do me a favor? Will you just come and walk with me at Canyon Springs? And I want to be able to listen. And what you get when you're with Gino is you get love and you get grace amidst the honesty. And so I just want to ask you a couple questions. You know, we've talked through some of these things. And one of the things that I've always asked you is just tell me your story. And so maybe let's start with some of the blue laws. And you and your dad, Gene Mingo, tell us about Gene and your family back then. And then I think you know the story I'm looking for, right? It's a hotel. Yeah.
Good morning. I come from...
No pressure on Gina today.
No. I come from essentially NFL royalty in a sense.
Yeah.
My dad was one of the original Denver Broncos, was attributed to actually helping save the AFL, was a scoring champ 3 years in, played almost 11 years, should be in the Hall of Fame, was the first black NFL field goal kicker. He's the only person in the NFL to score 6 different ways of over 50 yards or more. That'll never be done again. But he played during a time where racism was intense. I'm about a year and a half old or so. My dad's traded to the Miami Dolphins. It's time to go to training camp. He checks us into the hotel, the place we're going to stay. It's nice. They find out we're black. They say we can't stay there. So then he spends...
What year is this?
This would be 67, 68.
Okay, yep.
So he spends the next couple hours trying to find a hotel somewhere to check he and his wife and his year and a half, almost 2-year-old child in. And as soon as he would pull into the parking lot, the vacancy light would switch to no vacancy. So finally he finds this just rat-infested, cockroach-infested place would allow us to check in. He has to get to camp because if you don't, you'll get fined if you're not on time. They don't make the money that you make nowadays, where we could go, I don't care if I get fined. I'll pay that $250,000. Doesn't matter. I'm making $200 million. No, not the case. So he's like, I got to get to camp. So my mom's a bit of a neat freak. She's 91 years old. She's at home right now. And she's pregnant with my sister, Susan Renee. And so my mom has this little child that she does not want crawling on the floor where there's cockroaches and there's rats. So she's busy scrubbing the floor and she's doing things and she's trying to keep it clean. She don't want me picking up stuff, putting it in my mouth. My grandmother is saying, Gene, you have got to stop working so hard. Stop doing that. But mom, on and on and on. Well, one day she's doing this and she slips with the wet floor. The broom jabs her very hard into the side of her stomach. She falls, goes through this whole thing, has to go to the hospital. The placenta is now separated. And my sister is born a couple months early, lives for 4 hours, dies. They don't let my mom see her. My dad can, but they don't let her. She's buried in Fort Lauderdale, Florida in a little pink casket. Susan Renee Mingo. I grew up my whole life. I'm 56 now. I would have had a 54-year-old sister that I could have driven crazy. So I grow up with that. I grow up with a mom who is now extremely bitter because of this situation. The residual effect of racism is why my sister's not here.
Yeah. Let's fast forward. You're playing at Oregon State, all right? And on game day, what would they cheer?
So I had.
You guys are going to help me with this in just a second.
It paid off that my name rhymes, Gino Mingo. I was in a list of the top 25 most unusual and interesting names.
Is that right?
Yeah, on USA Today, Gino Mingo.
That's something to be known for.
Yeah, something. And so up at Oregon State, I have the privilege of being the only person that this has happened to date. My sophomore year, we're playing. I loved basketball. I could have played dual basketball. I know it doesn't look like it right now, but I could have played basketball as well in college with one of my best friends, Laker great AC Green, and these people of that nature. And so I loved basketball. The minute football season ended, that Sunday, I was at the rec playing basketball. And so you obviously make friendships with people. And so there was this one gentleman that we played all the time, and he would be the stat runner up in the box at the football games. And so one day the announcer was sitting there, and I make a tackle. And he goes, Gino Mingo on the tackle. And he goes, man, I need a gimmick. And my buddy running the thing, he goes, well, there's your gimmick right there. And he goes, yeah. And by God's grace, I make the next 3 tackles. I was on fire. So I hear on the next tackle, Gino Mingo on the tackle. I make the next one. Gino Mingo on the tackle. I make the next one. I don't even hear the play call. I literally look up at the box and go, would you let go of my name? But after that last one, the whole stadium echoed him. Gino Mingo on the tackle. I'm walking on campus and people are Gino Mingo. And I'm like, no. And then my teammates look at me and go, man, I'd love it if people were saying my name like that. And it stuck. And for the rest of my career, every time I made a tackle, they would yell, Gino Mingo on the tackle. But the interesting thing was, during the week sometimes I would borrow my friend's moped, one of them high-powered ones, not them little, almost like a motorcycle. And this happened to me a couple times. I would be driving on the street, and all of a sudden I heard behind me this truck speeding up. And I looked in the little mirror, and he's really getting close. And I whip off the side of the street very quickly. And he pulls over, and he rolls down his window, and he yells, "Get out of the street, nigger!" Now, I said, "Get out the car." And he didn't. But I want you to know that same person on Saturday was yelling, "Gino Mingo!" on the tackle. I went to Corvallis. I went to Oregon State in Corvallis, Oregon. That's a football town. It's a small town. Everybody was at the games. And if you were male, man, you were at that game on a Saturday. But Monday through Friday or Sunday through Friday, I was that N-word to him.
I don't think it's impossible for us to understand, because there are things that people told you when you were in junior high. I remember when I was growing up, this, of course, nowhere near, but some kid called me, "Hey, Beak." Well, now since then, I've been nervous that my nose is too big, right? They repeat. This thing repeats in your head. And when you hear N-word, 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 we were having this conversation. I'd never walk out of my house or walk into a new situation or walk into a whole new set of people. I never once think of the color of my skin, ever. I've never, ever experienced that in my entire life. And that just hasn't been the case.
It's so interesting as Jack put up pictures of the church back in the 50s, and obviously everybody that he put up was white. And then, you put up the pictures of Jesus. As someone black, I literally kind of cringe, even after 30 years of ministry, when I see that picture. Because I'm quite certain he was probably more closer to my color than Jack's color.
Yeah.
Now, as somebody black, what happens is what we deal with, and when Jack talked about fighting for your right to be right, fighting for your stance to be heard today in 2022, what someone black is really struggling with is that you don't see the residual effects of what racism has done. Ever since a little boy, I have always, every day, walked out of my house aware of my blackness. There's not a day, even today, under the being blood bought by Jesus, that I don't walk out of the house thinking about my blackness and thinking about how I have to interact with someone who doesn't look like me. Most of the time, who you get is Gino the Putty Cat. I keep the lion asleep in the den the majority of the time. I am constantly reducing myself, and it was ingrained in me as a child. Can I stand up for myself? See, when I played sports, if Jack spoke up on the field and maybe spoke back to his coach and maybe voiced his opinion, the coach would be like, man, he has chutzpah. He's a go-getter. He's going to be a leader. I see him going places. The minute I would stand up for myself in anything, got to watch out for him. He's a troublemaker. Got to watch out for that one right there. I don't know if we can trust him. He's going to be a problem child. This is what I and many grew up with all the time. And the residual effect of that, I call it compound interest. What you hear from someone black when we're talking about the racial divide today, because people will go, oh, but things are so much better. I mean, look how much money LeBron's making. That's a unicorn. It's so much better. It's. What do you mean? None of that's happening to you. What are you talking about? Well, there's plenty of you in here could teach it better than me. Maybe you're an economist, but compound interest. Spiritually, we deal with compound interest. It's amazing that you picked the song "The Blessing," because it is talking about Deuteronomy 28. The curse and the blessing. And what is amazing about that scripture is it is really trying to teach us about the effects of compound interest. If you are sinning, you'll be cursed 3 and 4 generations. So imagine if those 3 or 4 generations don't get it together, it goes on and on. But if you walk in Jesus Christ, it goes to 1,000 generations, and my children and my children. But as someone black, it's hard to relate to that, because the compound interest we have felt the majority of the time has been negative.
So here's how I'd put it. My son was off at law school, and we were there having that conversation. And the way he put it was like this. It's like having a 100-meter dash, all right?
Right.
And the 100-meter dash is the whistle blows, and everybody takes off running. And one of them has a 50-pound weight, and he's carrying the 50-pound weight. But at the 50-yard mark, he can put it down. So now it's even. So I think the point I'm trying to help people understand is this. You would never say to somebody who is battling cancer, wow, you know what? I had COVID, right? I was sick too once, right? You would never say to somebody who had just lost their job, you know what? We all lose our job, no big deal. You'll find another one. What we would do in that position is we would say, oh my gosh, wow, that's got to be really hard. Tell me your story. I want to know your story. I want to hear from your point of view. And why in this particular case do we want to say it's not there, or now people are judging me because I'm white, when all I'm asking you, I'm not asking you to decide, I'm not asking you to fix the whole problem. I'm not asking you to say, hey, America, this is what we should do, because I don't know what that answer is. I don't know if you know what that answer is. But I'm asking you is to say, tell me your story, and I want to walk with you. And when you tell me you're hurt, I'm not going to say, get over it, man. I'm going to feel I'm going to feel here. I'm going to feel in my gut the hurt that you feel. And I don't know what you think as far as it being real or not, but I can tell you right now, it is real.
It is. And yes, of course, there's times that someone black may scream racism or something, and it might not be, but generally what you're getting is the compound interest that they've experienced over decades. When I think about this message and what you've said, a rhetorical question for me is, well, how did we get here? Well, the obvious answer is sin. How do we get to any bad place? It's always sin. But where are we going? Where we're trying to go to this place of compassion, this place of gentleness and humility and patience and the things that Jack was preaching out of that passage of Scripture. But how do we get there? And this is where I want to challenge everybody, no matter what the 7 layers of epidermis are on your body. We have got to calibrate our value system. It always comes back to that. I love 1 John 4:20. The person who says they love God and hates their brother is a liar. For how can you hate the one whom you see and love the one whom you don't? And what God, from the very beginning of the garden, it always was about the value system. The devil got upset because of the value system. God created us in his image, imago Dei. Lucifer was not created in God's image. It was about the value system. When you and I can look and recognize and find the imago Dei in every human being, then we can actually move with, I love this. Sympathy is when you feel what someone's feeling. Empathy is when you can jump into their shoes, and maybe you've experienced it too, and you can empathize. But compassion, and that's why the movie was called The Passion. Compassion is not only do you feel it, and not only can you empathize with it, but compassion is when you are moved to do something about it. Now, I've had white people, well, I've never owned slaves. I haven't done that. You are absolutely correct. And Jesus never sinned, but he decided to do something about it. And God is looking at all of us. Me, I talk to black people, I'm like, listen, if you want things to change, stop trying to hold stuff over somebody who's white over their head. Give them the grace to not know what they don't know. Give them the grace to have blind spots and help walk them out. Do not go, you got to change, and then hold it over their heads. But then I look at somebody white and say, do not say, I just need to get over it. Do not just cut me off at my knees and negate everything I've experienced in my life because of my skin color and then tell me you love Jesus. That does not work.
Let me tell you something about my friend Gino, is I can ask him any question, and I can be a dumb white guy, and every time his arms are open wide to embrace me. He's not in my fit. Although I love it when he gets fired up because I need it. We're going to lead in communion. How amazing that we get to do communion. That we're all equal with Jesus. I have a challenge, and that is to get to know somebody whose skin looks different than yours. Because I'll tell you something, when you start asking those questions, you understand what it's like. This isn't the same, but it's sort of the same. Do you know, like when you're a middle-aged white guy, that's easy. Do you know how much harder it is to be a female in this country and what you have to face? Are you asking questions of the females in your life? I have a friend that we just added to our board who is one of the strongest businesswomen in the world, and she could tell you chapter and verse all the things that have happened to her because she's female and she's not male. Are you having those questions? Do you have a friend who's Asian and walking through this? There are many Asian people who are afraid to share exactly how they feel. Look, it's not our job we're not solving it, but can you ask the questions? And can you feel with? So one of the things that I do is I read all kinds of books when it comes to this so that I know, like Arthur Ashe's autobiography, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has a great book called Coach Wooden and Me, which has some great insights. I just read Andre Iguodala's book. He plays for the Warriors right now. He's great. He has this quote, I gave it to you. I'll close with this. He says, race was not something I became aware of in a moment. It was something that built slowly in my understanding of my world. It didn't run around when I was 3 years old thinking I'm black. None of us do. Everything in my world seemed normal. My friends, family, community, these were the regular people. Our lives unfolded in a normal way. We had our own society filled with all kinds of people. And we thought it represented the entire world. Some of us were kind, some were rougher, some were honest, some were tricky, some were quick-witted or emotionally intelligent, some were slow-thinking or oblivious. All of us were black. It didn't seem that our lives were organized around white people or what they thought of us or what they could do to us. If I had any consciousness of white people, it was simply that they were somewhere else. They were over there. But as I grew, that changed, slowly but certainly. The freedom to be unaware of racism simply doesn't last long if you're black. So I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to pray, and then we're going to go to communion. We'll do it together.